Hello, Katarina. Thank you so much for joining me on today's podcast. Would you like to introduce yourself briefly for the audience?
Hi, Alex. Thanks very much for having me. Delighted to be here. And I'm a health regeneration coach, and I work specifically with senior professional women, helping them eliminate exhaustion and fatigue, and help them regain through that process energy and health so they can cope with their stressful and demanding lives.
Amazing. Stressful and demanding lives, and right now homeschooling, probably.
Yes, exactly. That's that on top of everything else.
Yes, that doesn't help. Okay, awesome. So, health regeneration coach, fascinating kind of title role. Would you like to share more about that? How did you get into that? What's your story, Katarina?
That's a very good question, Alex. It's been a bit of a journey to arrive to at this point. I've been interested in holistic health for as far as I can remember, really, but that wasn't always my profession. It was a vocation and interest. And I always considered myself to be very healthy, but at the same time, I struggled with a lot of health problems, like many women do these days, totally unaware of the fact that it had anything, that I had anything to do with it. I just assumed that, having digestive health problems was just a normal thing to live with. Constantly recurring cold sores, that was just a normal thing, or you're just a little bit stressed, or whatever we would say. I struggled with, so the digestive health problems were really the big thing for me. In the end, I was diagnosed with IBS, like so many women are these days. And the doctors just said, well, there isn't, just go and drink some mint tea. And they would sort of mention stress, but I think that was pretty much as far as it went. Recurring viral and bacterial infections were also something that started to trouble me, especially as I moved towards my late 30s and I was approaching my 40s. And at the same time, I was healthy, I'd exercise, I was into yoga by that point, so what was going on? I was kind of really, at this point, trying to see the connection that something isn't quite right. And it was the point when I started to, when I decided to retrain myself. I was at a point of a career change. I went and trained as an integrative nutrition health coach, which is what I am officially. What I really wanted to get further into was Ayurvedic medicine, and that's the point when I managed to, I met some people who helped me in an amazing way to really get my body restored so that it would just kind of correct itself and heal itself. And that made me realize that, so many, first of all, that we are unaware of the issues that are happening in our body. And we consider it normal. They're not normal. They're common, but they are not normal. But then secondly, that we either rely on medication or treatment, which doesn't really help. It doesn't deal with the root cause of the problem. And when I had my regenerative coaching and the programs, I was amazed how my body, within a relatively short period of time, and conventional medicine, and many people, when they hear this, they don't like to hear it, but I have healed my IBS. I no longer struggle with IBS. It disappeared because my gut was, the digestive system was healed, was repaired, and I no longer had any sensitivities to any food. I pretty much eat everything, and I love food, and that was just such a big thing for me. And everything else, my immune system started to work properly. So I no longer, I cleared all the bacterial infections that I struggled with, which many women do at that age, especially when they get older. No more viral infections. I haven't had a cold sore since. And just, the amounts of energy that I have in the day. So that's where the regeneration, for me, was the big thing. Does that just to give you a little bit of an insight.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. There are a couple of things I want to touch on that I think were very relatable. I think a lot of listeners could probably relate to this, especially. So I want to highlight here the difference, what you mentioned, between normal and common. And I remember, I think you wrote about this on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago, and it was a post that really stood out to me, and it just gets me thinking, you know, oh, I'm a bit tired. Oh, but that's normal. You know, I'm busy. I'm stressed. This is just how life is meant to be now. I'm a bit older and I have a career and, you know, all these things. But really, that is just common, unfortunately, due to modern society, I guess. But it's not normal. I'm putting that in inverted commas.
Yes, you know, it's. I'm glad you picked up on that, because it is. It's a real pandemic. That is the real pandemic that we don't really understand, or we've lost that connection with the fact that we are human beings and we have evolved in a certain way, but we haven't yet evolved to cope with the volume and the intensity of our modern life, the way we live today. Perhaps in the last, I don't know, open to discussion, but maybe the last 50, 60, 70 years, which is, you know, it's such a short space of time compared to our own evolution. And, you know, and this is where we keep hitting the wall, because we think that we can overrun our biology, but we can't. You know, there is only that much pressure that our body physically can cope with, and our mental, you know, our brain can cope with, our emotional capacity can take. So this is, you know, where so many people are now finding themselves, oh, there's something wrong with me, you know, I'm not cut out for this, or, you know, people feel there is something wrong with them, and women, you know, start to feel they're not good enough, or they're not worthy enough, or, you know, they're guilty because they're not coping. They should be managing, you know, more than they're already doing, without a question, well, how much should I actually be coping with? How much is my body? And so, you know, and the good news is that we can cope with the stress that we have, but we have to learn how to restore ourselves on regular basis, quite literally within the 24-hour cycle of the day, that we return ourselves to that state where our body regenerates, because our ancestors didn't have, you know, the technology, the constant stimulus that we have, the energy from the light, you know, the artificial lighting, for instance, that disrupts our circadian rhythms, the electromagnetic fields, the effervescent lighting from our devices, and, you know, all those things are, and food, of course, gosh, we can talk about food forever, you know, the toxicity and the chemicals that we now consume. So our bodies are overloaded, basically, and so we don't know it. This is the thing. We have to catch up with ourselves a little bit and understand how we can be natural beings, because we are part of nature, so that we master our environments, we master our stress, rather than we become the victims of it. And what it looks like is health symptoms from relatively young ages, you know, 30s, 40s, when we should be at our best. We are either overweight, or we are, you know, our health starts to break down. It's little things here and there, then it's a chronic disease, and so on and so forth. And we live longer, but our quality of life isn't that good, quite frankly, because we don't know what to do with it. So yes, so it is common, but it isn't normal, because in evolutionary terms, we're not adapted to. We are still the natural beings that, you know, get should get the melatonin in our system in the evening to go to sleep as the sun goes down, for example, and we should naturally, get up as the sun goes up, and we just don't have that anymore.
Just for me, it's more simplification. Like in modern day, we love to complicate everything. Everything should be innovative in the most complicated way possible. And the way you put it, like the way we've been eating for the past 70 years, and really like the past 20 years, I guess things have really sped up in terms of food production and the things that we eat compared to, our body has had practically zero time relative. Like 20 years or 50 years is not enough time to adapt and evolve towards that. Whereas for, I don't even know time frames, but just so much time we were just eating food that we hunted, food that we foraged, food that we could get our hands on. And there's also the element of movement that I want to touch on. Like we are not evolved to sit at our desks and type or sit behind a computer for 12 hours a day, but what do? Almost all of us do that for huge chunks of our day, and we're designed as hunter-gatherers. Like I love the some research has been done on blue zones, so where parts of the world where they have the greatest chance of living to over 100, or the greatest section of their population to live over 100. And huge sections of these populations are like Amazonian tribes or Maasai, or I don't know the different names of them, but they're the ones who don't have phones.
Traditional societies, if you like. Yes,
traditional societies, they're not going to McDonald's every week. They're the ones who are hunting their food, eating what a lot of us would consider arguably a relatively unbalanced diet, but entirely stuff that they can get their hands on. They're spending their lives on their feet, running, hunting, going to sleep when the sun goes down, getting up when the sun comes up, and they're living to 100, probably with an amazing quality of life. Like we're just so maladapted to our modern stimuli, which leads to this what is considered normal, again in inverted commas, versus common. It's amazing point. And then that drives this stress sort of, I guess, build up. I like to call it the allostatic load, the culmination of all these different elements of stress, and it goes so far beyond just we think physical stress, for example, or mental stress from a job, right? It goes so much more beyond that with some of the ones that stand out to me. Existential stress, like during lockdown, people who've lost their jobs, they're probably sat at home thinking like, what could get really deep here, but like, what am I here for? What's my goal? What's my purpose?
Absolutely. Well, purpose plays a big part. Yes, of course.
And these are all things that add stress to your body, and if you're not giving yourself the to use your terminology, the restorative, regenerative ability to recover from that, then you're just going to end up degenerating and developing.
Absolutely. I think degeneration is a very good sort of opposite word of the regeneration. And and I've literally just thought about this now as we speak, that it's exactly the things that cause the chronic stress in our body, because that's prolonged period. Stress is okay, and as you know, stress is in fact good for us. It's what as species we survived because we have the stress response, and we were able to save ourselves from danger. So stress, and there is positive stress, like jumping into cold, icy water is good stress for the body. If you're fit enough to do it, obviously, please don't go out and do it. But if you're fit enough, that's that builds up your immune system. For example, so stress in itself isn't the bad, the evil necessarily, but it's the prolonged period of stress. It's the chronic stress that then leads to what we call the low-grade chronic stress, which is what happens in the body. And the same things that cause this stress, that chronic stress in us, exactly the same thing can help us regenerate it, but it depends on what it is. So with food, if you're consuming only food that's been produced in factories that industrially made, that has zero, it might have some nutritional value because something's pumped into it, but has zero sort of energetic value in its wholeness and in its natural form. That's going to do more damage than good to your body. But if you switch that for food, it's both food, well, if you call junk food food, maybe we shouldn't call junk food food, maybe it's just things. But, you know, you replace that with proper food, that just entirely changes what your body, how your body responds to it. So, you know, we're not, you know, the solutions aren't somewhere out there. The solutions are relatively simple, in fact. It's just that because they're so simple, we don't see them. You know, it's such a typical human condition, unfortunately, that we've got to somehow be woken up to see the thing that's in front of us. You know, it's part of this transformation, I guess, that, you know, it's the simple things that really, really do count. But, you know, we can go through lifetime never realizing it. So it's, yes, yeah.
That's such a good point. We want to climb the hill to pick up the thing on the other side of the hill when there's something 2 meters in front of us that we could pick up and would serve the same purpose.
Absolutely.
Something that you mentioned earlier, and you kind of touched on there, this reliance on medication and treating the symptom, which I think is a real issue with our medical industry, I guess. It's all medication-led, pharmaceutical-led. Unfortunately, I guess in some cases, sponsors and pharmaceutical industry is such a affluent industry, but the treating of, oh, you have a headache, let's solve the headache. You're not solving, okay, it might go away, but then every time the headache comes back, you just take a paracetamol, ibuprofen, or whatever, aspirin, but you're never solving the root. You will repeatedly experience that symptom. You have something to treat the symptom when it comes up, you will repeatedly experience that. So do you want to talk a minute about kind of how you go about treating the root cause and really diving into the thing that leads to the symptom?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, Alex, and there is a place for our Western medicine, for sure, you know, for acute conditions. It's fantastic when you've had an accident or you've broken a limb, you know, you can have life-saving surgery and we're grateful for it. But when it comes to the lifestyle diseases, which are now recognized even by the World Health Organization, and we know what they are, you know, the chronic diseases like type 2 diabetes, cancer, the autoimmune disease, and I can't think of the others, but you know, the most common chronic diseases these days. You know, they unfortunately, treating the symptoms just makes things worse. You know, because you know, the headache is not you don't have a headache because you have an absence of paracetamol in your body, right? Or your cholesterol isn't high because you don't have enough statins in your system. And so this is where, you know, again, we've got to sort of really get to the point where we understand that perhaps for short term, okay, you know, it might help to ease your pain for a little bit, but longer term, side effects are effects. They're not just side effects from medication, they're effects on the body. And you know, if you take hormonal, some kind of help for hormones being out of balance, that hormone, you know, hormonal system is an ecosystem. If you put one thing that's not meant to be there, just to fix one part of it, the whole system gets impacted. And I think our whole body is a little bit like that. So it's so important that we understand that it's okay to say that our Western medicine doesn't work for everything, you know, that it's okay to, because people can be quite defensive when you go into this point, I find, and, you know, to realize a little bit more that it's not just airy-fairy to say that, oh, you know, our body is made to heal by itself. You know, this is not just some, you know, dodgy healers somewhere saying they're trying to fix you from the distance with some, you know, this is it's the way our body has been built, you know, to heal by itself. If we give it what it needs, if we give the body what it truly needs. So this is where, you know, finding the root cause of the problem, and you could go you can dig really deep for the root causes. You know, sometimes it is things that are quite difficult. You know, it'll be some serious trauma that you've gone through that leads to the chronic pain, for instance. But I think a lot of the time, there are things that aren't that difficult to find. Actually, you don't have to dig too deep, and they are literally related to how we go about our everyday life. You know, and that we go about it a little bit too much in the unconscious mode, on an autopilot, and we don't stop and feel and think, why am I feeling like this? You know, and what does this mean? Am I just tired? So I go and have a early night, a good night's sleep, and you wake up restored and fresh the next day. Great, that was just tiredness. But if you're trying to, you know, recover something with sleep, but you're not really, you sleep and sleep and sleep, and it's not helping you, you're still in that state, then, you know, you need to look further, deeper as to what is the problem in the body. I often find with women is the digestive system, digestive health problems, because a lot of our health depends, and our energy is founded in our digestive health, for example. So that would be one, often the root cause. And of course, we can talk about what causes that. It's the food, it's the stress, it's, you know, the toxic environment that we can also try and eliminate. So yes, it is absolutely fundamental for us to go forward and prevent from our health from further degeneration and deterioration, is that we understand that treatment is only a band-aid solution. It's only a temporary solution. It doesn't really deal with the problem, and it will keep coming back and get worse unless it's addressed.
Yeah. Okay. One of the things you touched on there that I want to highlight, this sort of self-awareness element of, we'll go throughout the day. I think there's some statistic I might have read in books where that said 60% of the actions we take are completely autonomous in a way, right? Driving to work, if you've driven to work 50 times already and you're going for the 100th time, you're not really thinking, you're just kind of on autopilot. You don't get to work and go, I remember every exact detail of that drive. You're just like, oh, I'm here. Like, I did drive to work. Don't really remember it, but that's fine. And the same applies to eating, obviously, stress management and stuff. But just early this week, I was chatting on another interview with Rebecca, and we're discussing the really strange concept, how you eat, right? Everyone wants to talk about what you eat, and, you know, X number of grams of this and 20 grams of this and all this stuff, which again, getting far too into the nitty gritty, complicating everything. And in reality, if we just slow down and take 10 minutes, 15 minutes to just sit down, have a meal in a nice social environment, that taking that time to just sort of realize and have that moment of self-awareness and kind of relaxation, the impact of just doing that is kind of profound. Whereas focusing on the wrong things, not necessarily the wrong things, but getting too into the depth of what you're eating and then having it on the go whilst being and feeling very stressed and on the run. So I think that's all very interesting. So I want to ask then, with what you've shared and some of your journey, what was the biggest change, most transformational change for your health?
So in terms of a sort of a condition, if you like, I think the most amazing thing for me was to not have to suffer irritable bowel syndrome, IBS. I think that was it was such a debilitating state that it would go for some time and then come back. And when it came back, it really impacted my professional life, my everyday life, my personal life. So to have gotten rid of that for good, which is just extraordinary, because people say you can't, you know, it's a chronic condition, and they're just tells you what we were talking about earlier, how quick we are to just accept that our body is somehow, predestined to be ill. It's not, it's the opposite. It's actually, made to be well, and it can fix itself. So for me personally, getting rid of IBS was huge. But there is one thing that I think had a huge impact on my overall health, and specifically on my energy levels and my mental clarity. That sort of ability to be able to and of course I get tired like everybody else, I get tired, but not to now have that state of exhaustion that you can't recover from, which means that everything you do through the whole day is so much harder. Your relationships are more difficult because you are less tolerant, you are more irritable. For me, calming my nervous system, learning how to get my nervous system under control, that was probably the most profound health change. And that meant that I had to, for that, I had to dig a little bit deeper, because some of the stress, why we are stress prone, some things come from, your earlier childhood, the influences that, were there in your life when you were growing up. But also finding the tools and the techniques to help me through that, and yoga still plays a huge role in my life. Breathing techniques do, and it becomes so that you really do get your nervous system to just be calmer all around, even though I'm still quite a energetic person, and quite sort of I can get involved with a lot of stuff at the same time, which I can multitask, which isn't that good for you. I still do things that aren't quite good for me, but I now have a nervous system that is sort of responsive to I have a communication going, my brain goes, I recognize this. Okay, well, this is what you need to do now. And now this is what you need to do, so that I take my body and my mental state back into that equilibrium, more or less with success. And I stay there, and that is fantastic. I have to say that is really, truly transformative. It's enabled me to cope with some, life, difficult situations in life in the last few years. Like everyone else, I've had things happening, and it's just, it's amazing not to have to deal with health issues and exhaustion whilst this is happening. So, yeah.
Amazing. So the two elements of the nervous system, you've got the sympathetic, fight or flight, stress. And that's how a lot of professionals, a lot of people, especially in today's day and age, just live their life. This constant 24-hour state of, I am stressed, I am about to go into a meeting that I'm scared of, I'm about to have a conversation with my boss that I'm terrified of, oh, I need to pick this up, oh, I've got another deadline, blah, 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 all along until they go to bed, and then finally they have not enough sleep, and they get up, they wake up to their alarm, which is immediately like, bam, 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 off I go, here's my fight or flight, and they go spend the rest of the day like that. And
that's right.
Evolutionarily speaking, I spoke about this on an earlier podcast with Rebecca, who's a stress and burnout coach, burnout prevention coach, and we were basically saying your body thinks you're running away from a bear or a tiger all the time, right? That has, that just cannot be good. So the flip side of that is the parasympathetic nervous system, often called your rest and digest. That's when
and reproduce, which is so important for fertility. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, Alex.
That's when the literally digestion occurs. That your digestive tract pretty much turns off when your body thinks you're running away from a lion, right? But we're not running away from lions. We have a work deadline, and so that work deadline causes your body not to digest the food, which means you're not getting the nutrition from it which it needs, because you're in this constant state. It's almost just this cycle of
It is.
never-ending negativity, which leads to long-term chronic stress, which causes these problems.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of the fight or flight is also freeze. And I think that so many people would describe their situation as I feel stuck. You know, I'm stuck. And in fact, that is the freeze response. It's the response, the stress response of the cortisol, you know, being pumped through your adrenal glands. If your adrenal glands are still doing that, because if they're not, then you've got the case of adrenal fatigue, which is, you know, a lot of the exhaustion that I talk about is actually adrenal fatigue. But, you know, going back to what we were talking about, is that freeze response comes from that. It's a stress response, but we don't really know where it comes from, and we just think, oh well, you know, I'm depressed, or we call it I'm, you know, we come up with other emotional kind of explanations, whereas in fact you could just be in a stress response. It's, you know, that you're in fear, and you need to know how to overcome that, rather than make it even more difficult by bringing on other sort of emotional states, which, you know, it just complicates things unnecessarily. So I think being stuck is an important one to become aware of. That, well, why are you being stuck? What does this mean? Why can't you move forward? It's just a different, you know, different sort of another addition to the fight or flight response. That it's not just always about running away, but it's also being stuck in one place and not knowing which way to go.
No, that's a very good point. Very good point. I think that's the one that people most, as I forgot about there and then in the moment, it's the one most people forget about. But one that is very relatable, you know, that phrase that you shared, I feel stuck. That's something that so many people can relate to, especially probably now in lockdown with everything going on.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to share some tips and actions that people can take to start to move away from this stress response, start to calm their nervous system as you did. So what were the sort of tactical, tangible things that you did on your journey during your transformation to help calm that nervous system, get back into the parasympathetic, and really start to sort of almost chill out, to colloquialize it?
So I mean, my approach, which I've founded in what really worked on my issues, and then with the first women that I worked with, and that is, we approach it with a digestive health first. So digestive system has to work before you tackle anything else, and that's because it's the key route to everything else. With the digestive system, I love the Ayurvedic approach of the lymphatic system being part of that, because when your body is detoxifying, it detoxifies through the lymphs. It's the lymphatic system that gets rid of the toxins in the body, but we forget that, whereas Ayurveda reminds us of that. And part of the lymphatic system is the lining of the gut, of the lower intestine. It's the lining of the lungs, in fact, as well. So breathing, this is where nose breathing is part of detoxification. It's so important that people learn how to breathe through their nose and not through their mouth, because it's part of the way our body clears the toxicity out of the system. And, you know, we have a lot of the toxins that comes in and out through the air we breathe and the food that we eat, obviously, and the water that we drink. So the digestive system and the lymphatic reboot and regeneration is the first step. Now, you know, whether people can do that at home, I haven't quite figured that one out yet. Obviously, I think it's best when it's done under a supervision of someone, because you do need to go through something that's a bit more structured for a period of time. Typically 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So my program, which is part of my initial stage, is 21 days, for example. So once that happens, it really is absolutely extraordinary what happens in the body. And I haven't had one client so far that hasn't had the changes, the transformation in the body happen, if I can use that word, from about day 7 to day 10, where it's, you know, they go into it with all sorts of things, like I was, you know, the uncontrollable sugar cravings, the bloating, the stomach pains, the digestive health issues that we talked about, a variety of different hormonal problems, heart palpitations, joint pain, all sorts of different things. I'm trying to think if I'm forgetting something really, really important in those symptoms, but those literally start to disappear as you do the regeneration of the digestive system and the lymphatic system, and as you're cleansing, because the detoxification is the second stage. That happens once the digestive system is back working properly. Whereas we often think, oh, I'm just going to go and detoxify. Well, if you haven't quite corrected your digestive system, your body isn't going to detoxify. You might feel better because our body responds to any kind of change that we give it. That is the truth. You know, if you decide for a week to do anything differently that's quite radical, your body will respond to it. But whether that is going to tackle the root cause, that is a different story, right? So, and part of that process then is, and going back to your original question, is the nervous system, which plays a big part. But when your digestive health is coming back, your stress response is also becoming lighter. So you feel calmer. But of course you have to also help your body. And there is because I work with women who are very busy and they've got, you know, packed schedules. They are responsible for teams, they're responsible for projects, they have children at home, family, household, and all that. It's a case of literally a 10-minute practice in the morning. But it is specifically for that regeneration of the body. And then you've got a couple of very short breathing exercises to go with that. And this, in a nutshell, this is, you know, of course, it's more complex than that, because, you know, different people have different habits that you need to work on, and lifestyle changes that need to come into place. But in a nutshell, this is where the foundation of the sort of regeneration of the body, where it happens.
Katarina, I'd like to ask, what is one common myth that you would like to bust for us on today's show?
I didn't think about it in a general sense. I thought about it more about sort of health coaching, and I thought there aren't really myths there yet, because people don't really know about health coaching that well just yet.
What's one thing maybe that a client will approach you and say, maybe they have this idea that, oh, I can't do this because of X, that maybe you actually switch around because that's a myth that they've heard somewhere, or something specific to your coaching?
I don't know. I think I would often come up against something, you know, in the likes of, well, you know, I don't know how I can get rid of stress. You know, people can't quite imagine that, you know, they can't quite understand that stress is something that is a normal part of your life, but at the same time, it really depends on what that stress looks like. So I think that's what they really struggle with, and they don't quite believe when you say that you can help them become less stressed, and how that is linked to the health problems. So I think that connection is still quite a bit of a myth for everyone. For a lot of us, we can't quite make that connection.
Interesting. Yeah, I think there's starting to emerge more and more data that's showing that stress is actually really the trigger for these chronic diseases. It's people want to approach it by cutting out sugar and swapping it for artificial sweeteners, but the reality is often the best approach is yoga, for example, or breathing exercises, these sorts of things. I want to get your
and
thoughts.
also the regeneration of the digestive health, digestive system, which is really where the regeneration approach that I work with comes from, and that is hugely transformative.
I want to get your thoughts on detoxing. The phrase is thrown around a lot in the industry that people can go on these, I don't know, sugar detoxes, do a detox diet. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a difficult one, to be very honest, because unfortunately, like everything else, it's become an industry in itself. And my views on it are very similar to my views on, for instance, the gluten-free industry, that is almost really damaging people's health, because people think that their problem is gluten. And I'm not saying gluten can be really problematic for a lot of people, but I overhear, well, not now because we're in lockdown, but I remember this conversation I overheard with 3 women not so long ago last year, where they were telling each other, that they've one's cut out carbs, the other one's cut out gluten, and the third one, I can't remember what it was, but it's become a trend, which is really heartbreaking, because we do not realize the implications of these of what that means for your body. And detoxes, there are so many different things out there, and everybody will obviously have the claim to it that it's their thing that will work. You've got the juice cleanses, you've got different number of days that you need to cleanse, you've got really some radical stuff like water cleanse, you've got some things where you just eat meat in order to cleanse your body, all sorts of wild ideas. And I'm sure that there will be some truth in every single one of them. The problem is that when people decide to do anything, that they do it without really having a full understanding of what it means. I think that is fundamentally the problem, and this is why it's there is such a boom in detox industry, offers out there, because people are buying it, people are going for it, and it doesn't solve their problems, because I've had a number of women approaching me. And the question is, well, what have you tried before? And they will tell you they've tried a number of different things. And typically it's either that they haven't had they couldn't see it through because it was so harsh, which really, it just loses its meaning entirely. Or that they've done it, they felt great afterwards, but maybe 2 months down the line, they're back to their old habits, and they're back to eating as they did, because that cleanse or detox hasn't shown them what to do afterwards. A cleanse shouldn't just be something you do for a period of time. And yes, there is time and place for this, absolutely. In fact, we should detoxify after each, a seasonal detox. We should do that. But these detoxes shouldn't be in no shape or form radical, unless you are very fit and healthy and you've done these things before. If you're an ordinary person, typically really stressed and tired most of the time, this is it's the worst thing you can do for yourself, for your physical health and your mental health, because if you don't see it through, you're back to square one, thinking, I just can't do this. I'm hopeless. I'm useless. I hate myself. I hate my body. I hate the whole world. I'm just going to go and eat, the whole fridge right now. And I'm going to kill my pain, the emotional pain, and make it go away. And that's it, and that doesn't really go anywhere. So, again, like with everything else in the world of nutrition, we have to understand what's what. It's not carbs are bad, fat is bad, reduce your calories down to a certain number, or this is not what it's about. And it's the same thing with detox. So I would really caution everyone to really, really think very hard about and do more research, contact someone, talk to people, explore a little bit more. What is that particular detox going to do for you? What is it really going to do for you? So
brilliant points. I love the phrase temporary changes equals temporary results. You can do a 5-day juice cleanse, whatever detox thing, but it's unfeasible to sustain that, right? Therefore you probably lose a pound a day because you're consuming no calories. A lot of it will be water weight, but you're not going to keep that weight off. Your body's not going to maintain that state of, it's probably going to be less healthy after that time because you've devoid it of key nutrients it needs. So yeah, I mean, completely.
And what's the purpose of it as well? I think, you're bringing weight loss. I mean, you can't, weight loss is, and you're more of an expert on that than I am, through the regeneration that I do. It is what happens naturally with the body is that it loses typically in the first 6 weeks about up to 5 kilos. First 2 kilos is probably water retention, as I always think, as you would probably know yourself, and then the rest is maybe 3 kilos of fat. There is no weight loss. You have to be healthy to lose weight. That is really the fundamental of it.
That is such a good point, because people think I will lose weight to be healthier. But reality,
right. Absolutely.
Be healthy, then that would allow them to lose weight. But
and it's here where sorry, Alex, I just I really really love when we use energy as a health marker rather than our weight. Because energy, if you don't have energy, it can tell you volumes about the state of your health. There are so many people who don't have excess weight, who don't carry excess weight, and yet are so unhealthy. You have people who have a little bit of weight on them, but are that they're perfectly healthy, and it's that's part of the discussion about the body image, and so that goes a bit deeper.
The whole rabbit hole to dive into.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, with your programs there, I guess as people start to restore, regenerate, they return to more of their natural weight, where they should be sitting, not where society tells them they should sit, not to a body shape that society tells them they should be, to where they naturally should be. And from my angle, part of it's genetically driven. We all hold fat in different places, and that's fine. Some of us hold fat in our legs, some of us hold fat in our back. Like that isn't necessarily a sign of health. Okay, fat around the middle, especially if it's visceral fat and it's around our internal organs, that's a sign that that's negative and can be a precursor to kind of chronic diseases. But we are all different and unique, and I think that just gets lost so easily these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And the belly fat, I think for women in particular is, it's women really do hate when that fat starts coming to build up around the belly in, towards their late 30s, early 40s. And women think, oh, well, I don't know, it's just I'm getting older, or it's my hormones, or, that's another, that is another myth. There you are, your myth, that needs to be busted, because of course we go through the hormonal cycle throughout our life, and as well as monthly and so on, but it's, the fat is there building up on the waistline because you've been consuming too much sugar and you've disrupted your hormonal system, together with stress, not sleeping properly, and it builds up. The metabolism just isn't working in the way that it can do, even in your later years. So it is a bit of a myth that it comes with age, I think.
Katarina, if you could get the entire world population to do one thing every day, what would it be and why?
Yeah, I love your question, Alex. That's a good one. What I would do is, and I've thought about this for a little bit, and then I thought, don't think too hard. It's something really obvious. And so the obvious thing for me that we need to do, all of us need to do more of, is not just to slow down, but to do one activity that I think we stopped doing, that people used to do, and that is stare out of the window. So just kind of mindlessly look out of the window and just see what's happening. People used to do that before iPhones, before TV, as part of just pastime, and I don't know, maybe these days, because not many people are out, or it depends on where you live, obviously. In residential areas, you won't have too many people to observe, but there is always something to observe looking out of the window. And, it's that losing yourself in staring out, sort of without any purpose or agenda, because our day is filled with, stuff that we have to do. And so to do one thing which doesn't have an agenda, I think is brilliant, because it helps us to reconnect, not by forcing some kind of, finding something deeper within ourselves, but to truly reconnect, because we are who we truly are when we are lost out of our heads, get out of our heads. And I think staring out the window enables us to do that. I don't know, what do you think about that?
I love that. I think that's not heard that one before. Really like that. It makes me think of seeing some of these films that are portrayed in, old times, and people would just sit outside their door on a little stool and just sit there and don't do anything. They just sit and watch the world go by, I think is a phrase. And that's something we're so undervalued these days, because we always have the most powerful devices known to man. Our phones in our pockets, always within reach. There's always notification. There's always that dopamine trail pulling us away, and none of us just sit there and.
But I think that the problem is that these days, you can't even go for a walk just with you and your surrounding environment, because we take our iPhones with us and we go on a podcast, right? Or we go and catch up with someone, or we go and, whatever it is that we do, we're not just by ourselves. And so I think even going for a walk is no longer this activity that gives us that space to lose ourselves. This is why, I came up with something that we really don't do anymore, and to bring it back into our world is, sit by the window and stare, or, you know, in the summer, take your chair out and sit out. I think people would look at you these days as, you know, what on earth are you, are you doing? But why not? You know, why not? You know, it's, I think we're going to have to bring in some of these things back into our lives, because we are losing our mind, quite literally.
My favorite activities when I go on summer holidays, go to the beach and stuff, is to people watch. You just get a good spot.
Well, exactly. That's a very good, exactly.
You make sure to get a good spot where you can see most of the activities. You can see the competitive dads. You can see the dog owner who can't control their dog. The overactive kids. You see the ones
exactly, and you lose yourself in the world. And what happens is, I think, something which we don't experience these days, and that is being a little bit out of our own, you know, ourselves. You know, we go to bed, we have stuff filled up, you know, our head is filled up with stuff, and it's just, there's nothing comparable really that I could think of, except for, you know, sitting by the window and looking out and just being drawn in to whatever is happening, even if there's nothing happening. You know, look at people's windows and imagine what's going on in there, or I don't know, you know, look at the trees, or you know, the animals, the birds, the cats, anything. Just do it for 10 minutes a day.
Love it. Katarina, what are you curious about right now?
So I think what really gets me right now, and it's been the case for a while, and it is related to my interest in regenerative health, but it is the link between food production and climate change. One of the biggest issues, obviously, that we are grappling with at the moment, and we will grapple with until we find solutions. And I'm just really fascinated by, I don't really want to open up a topic of veganism and vegan diets, because I think that deserves a separate discussion. But in relation to, but also animal meat farming, that is so problematic for, you know, so both, not to demonize either right now, to sort of come from a neutral position on these two dietary or lifestyle theories, if you like, but to come at it from the point of nature, how nature regenerates, and how animal farming, regenerative farming, plays really, it's an inextricable part of the ecosystem, and we can't just move away from it and hope to live on plants, because plants won't grow unless we have animals on the land. So animals live in, you know, live in herds, I think, or mobs, I think is the term, mobs, that's it. So they are in groups, they move around the land, they graze, and therefore they, by doing that, they are regenerating the grasses that they eat. By moving, they're stamping on the soil, which helps to fertilize, so the manure to fertilize the land. And they move around. So by the time they return back to where they started, say 30 days later, that land has regenerated. And it is the soil, the biodiversity of soil, that is really key to everything. It is key to the biodiversity of the climate, of our environment, and it's key to biodiversity of our microbiome in the gut. And this is how we are fundamentally connected. So many of our mental health problems come from the imbalance of our microbiome. And from not consuming enough. And it's not about a probiotic pill. This is about what comes into our body through the food. Because if the animal is consuming the grasses that grow in the biodiverse soil, those microbes get to the meat and get to us as humans. So it's, if you see what I mean, it's this is the quality of the food that we need. That's what we need to return to. And then the vegetables that we hope to grow, which we cannot rely on the monocultures where the agriculture is just based on one crop. You've got to have the circulation of the crop in order to keep the biodiversity of soil. So it's this really that I'm so passionate about, and I'm trying to study more and more, and trying to figure out how to have these conversations without. And I think I can get a little bit triggered by disagreeing with in certain ways of doing things. But how can we have this discussion, this debate, with an open mind, really for the health of the planet and our own health? And I don't think either of the radical ways of producing meat in factories or growing DNA through DNA or something like that, that's not the solution. Neither is the solution going vegan, because they are too radical, and neither of them really take into consideration the importance of the regeneration of the planet, so, and our environment and the soil, which is key to our health as well. So that's really what keeps me up at night, Alex.
Wow, that is fascinating. I think I'm going to have to invite you back on, and we're going to have to discuss that in more depth at some point, because we
it
go all
is
day on that. I think that's
absolutely, totally
super interesting. I love the idea of hydroponics, vertical farming. So I've got a bit of an engineering background, so I think that's kind of smart innovation. Less space. Like I've seen these, they're almost like kitchen drawers. You pull them out and there's a lettuce, there's rows of lettuces growing with lighting and the exact amount of water solutions and stuff. I think that's very cool. And then there's I think it's called microfarming. I think it's something that's growing in the Asian culture, insects and that sort of stuff, which I'm very open-minded about food. I would eat anything, especially if it's nutrient rich.
But the thing is that there is enough food on the planet if we just understand how to replace industrial farming with regenerative farming, which would rebuild all the lost forests, to whether it's cattle farming or whether it's palm oil, or soy growth, either of those. So it can be done. I mean, the scientists who are interested in this, who are researching and working on this, have calculated this. It can be done. It's just that we're a little bit stubborn and hard-headed to open ourselves up, because we either believe that, no, we've got to stop eating meat in order to save our environment. Well, we're not going to save our environment. We're not going to save ourselves with that either, because the animals play a natural part. You can't take animals out of the environment, and you can use them to regenerate and raise animals with respect. I grew up on my grandparents' farm, and I saw that firsthand as a child, how they, the animals that they raised with so much love and respect, because they were feeding the family. And yes, when it came to the slaughter, they'd do it with a ceremony and grace and thanks, but they knew that was part of the natural cycle, which unfortunately upsets people, because they think that they're sentient beings and you shouldn't kill animals. Well, death somehow is part of our natural cycle on this planet, because death is life. And it's the tiger that isn't having an ethical discussion whether he's going to go and is killing a sentient being. You know, it's and we have, yes, because we've done so much damage to our planet and to ourselves, we are now withdrawing to the opposite and think that's a reaction. It's not really thought through. And I think I want it to be a bit more thought through. But there you go. I'll stop here because we we can go on and go on about this.
It's fascinating. I love when these discussions kind of, I'm going to say go off plan, but I never really have much of a plan to begin with, and kind of go into really interesting areas. But that is very, very interesting. Thank you for sharing all that. So to wrap things up, where can people find you, Katarina?
So I don't just hang out on LinkedIn. I suppose I live there. my practice, my business lives there. So you can definitely find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active. I try and do a post a day with anything that I think is valuable to, has been valuable to my clients or to anyone that I've helped. So you can actually get quite a bit of value from there. And get in touch with me. I do have a website as well, which is Stress Smarter, and that just tells you what I'm trying to get to, is to have, you know, become a little bit smarter about our stresses in life, I think. So those two places are very good places to find me.
Perfect. So is that stresssmarter.co.uk?
.com.
Stresssmarter.com.
Yeah.
And on social, on LinkedIn, you are Katarina.
Katarina Hunter.
With, so Katarina. Katarina.
Correct, yes. That's correct, yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining me today for this podcast. It's been a lot of fun having you on.
Thank you so much, Alex. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, really enjoyed it.
You really got me thinking about some things now.
It's been a pleasure.
Which is cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.